Hello everyone, I'm Multiprometheus 1, and I'm really excited because today we get to talk about Thomas and Friends. Ah yes, Thomas and Friends. Based on the books known as the Railway series by the Reverend W. Awdry, Thomas and Friends was a British children's show from the 1980s that captivated children across the world with its friendly smiling characters, its extremely memorable music, and its very unique style, which gave it a look and feel like no other program on TV. And while the show nowadays only has one of those things, it doesn't change the fact that I was obsessed with it when I was a kid. Some of my greatest childhood memories involve wearing out Thomas and Friends VHS tapes and annoying the hell out of my family with all the songs I memorized every word of. So when a half-hour-long fan film titled Thomas the Tank Engine Shed 17 started making its rounds around the internet, I didn't know about it. But 3 years later I did. So let's see what makes this film what made it cause such an uproar in the Thomas the Tank Engine fan base. This is Thomas the Tank Engine Shed 17. So the film begins with the typical opening shot of an episode of the show. What? What? Mommy? What the hell am I seeing here? It's almost like... Oh no. No. This is one of those creepypasta fan films, isn't it? You know what I'm talking about, right? The creepypasta fan films? The films that take something family-friendly and wonderful and happy and loving, and then they make it all sick and disturbing, and then it infests the internet and festers and becomes part of pop culture's sick obsession with horrifying things. This is one of those, isn't it? Okay, nope. It's okay, Prometheus. You can get through this. It's just your favorite childhood fantasy world being shown in apocalyptic ruin, post-apocalyptic ruin. You can get through this. You can get through this.
From the books to the television series, people around the world have grown up with the Railway stories, and all their cheerful characters. But the truth behind Thomas and his friends was no children's fantasy. The truth would be horrifying.
Go home.
Prometheus.
Oh, God. Thank you you're here.
I will protect you, my son. However, I cannot promise your very soul will not be tested. Very few Thomas and Friends fans have attempted to watch Shed 17, and even fewer have finished with their sanity. Beware, Prometheus. Beware.
I'm so scared. So according to this documentary, if you will, the island of Sodor, with no talking trains, mind you, was a prison camp for German POWs during World War II. 'Cause, that's what we want to hear about the magical island of Sodor.
Wenn die älteren Jahrgänge noch wanken werden könnten, die Jugend ist uns verschrieben und verfallen mit Leibesgeschehen.
Really? We're bringing Hitler into this? So this German professor Wilhelm something or another is one of the key scientists in the Third Reich, but apparently he's performing experiments so horrible even Hitler can't handle them, and he gets sent to the Sodor prison camps. And after the war ends and he's released, he and his family decide to stay, and his son grows up to be quite a successful scientist in his own right, and he founds Sodor Research and even forms a family, having a son named Thomas. Oh no, I think I know where this is going. And this is where Sir Topham Hatt enters the picture.
Oi! Get off my f***ing platform!
Oh. So apparently, in this version of the story, Sir Topham Hatt was a monster, firing almost everyone who worked on the Sodor Railway and letting it rust away. Not sure what business sense this makes, but the movie's forcing me to roll with it. So the young boy Thomas gets hit by a train and brutally injured because, yeah, I can still see where they're going with this, and a maintenance shed called Shed 17 becomes off limits to the public, with his father the professor often seen entering it and leaving.
Almost a year after the accident, the doors of Sodor Research were reopened. In an open invitation to the people of the island, Thomas rolled out of Shed 17.
Yes, people, you are actually seeing this correctly. In this version of the story, Thomas the Tank Engine was a young boy who was brutally injured in an accident and Frankensteined into a train in order to stay alive. Why have we done this? As a species.
Since no one could be sure how much of the engine was Thomas, the pressure caused by the engine could rupture his organs from the inside, and the incredible heat could boil him alive.
Thank you, movie! I needed that visual! So yeah, it turns out the fact that the young boy Thomas was converted into a tank engine ends up taking the world by storm, and people from all over want to get converted into trains too. The professor refuses, but Sir Topham Hatt sees a golden business opportunity and buys a controlling share in Sodor Research. And when it seems this whole thing couldn't get any darker, Sir Topham Hatt actually starts converting all these people into trains with one important stipulation. They work on the railway. Permanently. On the one hand, this is interesting social commentary, how all these people are so lustful and covetous of immortality that they're willing to give up their freedom and essentially become slaves. This is interesting social commentary. But at the same time, all of my beloved childhood characters were slaves that were people Frankenstein to death just because they wanted immortality.
Edward was first to have problems. He'd been filming all day for the new TV series they'd announced, and for his last scene, he had to pull into Wellsworth Station and whistle to the kids on the platform.
Peep, peep! Whistled Edward. Thank you very much.
Sadly, this was only the first in an increasing number of incidents.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay, Prometheus. It's okay, Prometheus. It's okay. And we also find out here why there are almost no diesel engines on the island. Apparently, the conversion process causes the fuel inside diesel engines to catch fire and burn their internal organs. Dear God, save me from this movie.
This footage shows engines being displayed to tourists during the off-season. Many of these engines were failed biofusion experiments and were too ill to work or were already dead.
One of the most iconic sequences from the show is ruined for you now, isn't it? I'm gonna start a support group. I'll DM you the details. The professor can't seem to live with what he's done anymore and shoots himself. And then Gordon dies. No, not Gordon. No, not Harold too. This movie is like reverse Disney. Instead of taking something horrible and disturbing and making it awesome and wonderful and yay, they take something awesome and wonderful and yay and they make it disturbing and horrible and it makes me sad. One night, Henry is cleaning up the wreckage when he is accidentally sent to Shed 17, and what he sees inside scares him so much he races away under his own power, without the driver or fireman in control. He confronts Sir Topham Hatt about what he saw, and later gives Thomas one simple warning: stay away from Shed 17. Now, there's an episode of the show called The Flying Kipper, in which Henry is taking his usual route when the switchers on the tracks freeze and accidentally divert him to a siding where he crashes into another train. In the episode and the original book, no one is seriously hurt. But according to this movie, it wasn't an accident at all. After he saw what was in Shed 17, Sir Topham Hatt decided he knew too much and needed to be taken out. And as if this whole thing couldn't get any worse...
I'm sending you to Crewe, a fine place for sick engines.
Crew. We all knew what that meant. With those few words, he'd sentence Henry to death.
Is it this movie's goal to just remove all joy from everything? Because it's doing a pretty good job. Thomas realizes why Henry was killed and decides to use what little of his own power he has to find out once and for all what is in Shed 17, the place where he was created. I'm so scared.
Why had the first biofusion operation worked so well, but nearly every operation since had failed? Sadly, Thomas found the reasons inside.
Thomas had never been the first operation. He hadn't even been second.
Wilhelm and Hans Goetze had to learn through trial and error how to bring their Thomas back from the dead. The following experiments had not had the same work put into them, resulting in the freak engines and aircraft that had developed so many problems on Sodor Island and around the world. In Shed 17, Thomas wouldn't discover who he was, but in fact, who he wasn't.
Thomas, Shed 17. 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 Thomas, Shed 17.